What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Streckmine, joined always by my main man, Steven Thompson. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. Pittsburgh Steelers, they are days away from the NFL Combine, an exciting week, the beginning, really, of the NFL draft journey. And right after that is free agency, trades, the NFL draft. It all begins in a matter of days. We got plenty to talk about, including a very important conference call that Steven was on yesterday. Some interesting additions that the Pittsburgh Steelers might be able to make to their defense this offseason. And then one theory on why the Pittsburgh Steelers are totally going to avoid a specific quarterback, a quarterback we have talked way too much about this offseason because, well, their new offensive coordinator just simply does not want him. It's a beautiful day here in the Berg. It's supposed to be a beautiful week. Is it not a beautiful day? Have you been outside?
No, but I guess maybe it looks beautiful. I don't know.
I did a little walking this morning. It's very warm. It's deceiving. It's deceivingly cloudy. Very nice outside. I would say for February, not bad. Nick, our boy producer Nick, down there trying to get some skiing in Maryland this weekend. Don't think that's going to happen, but I hope that he's enjoying himself in the lounge, sipping some espresso martinis and having himself a good time in some snow boots. How you feeling, my friend?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. I'm not skiing. I'm not a skiing guy. I've never been a skiing guy. But like everyone I know goes skiing. It's weird. I feel left out a little bit, but I know as soon as I step on a mountain, I would instantly, fall on my ass. It would not be a good time.
No, 100%. I've never gone skiing in my life. I used to snowboard when I was a kid.
Ooh.
And yeah, but somewhere along the way, I just lost it. You know how they say riding a bike, you never forget. Snowboarding, you
never learn.
It never sticks. And one day I went, I sucked, and I was like, yeah, we're done. We're never doing this. Is terrible. I don't know how people, but I mean, hey, I hope Nick has a great time. He seems like, if you're going on ski trips, you're a skier. You're a guy that this is your vacation. So I hope he's enjoying himself. I hope wherever he is, it's a lot colder than it is in Pittsburgh right now. But, if you're listening, have a good time down there, producer Nick. Let's talk about some Pittsburgh Steelers. There are two names that have popped up over the last 24 hours in connection to the Pittsburgh Steelers, both named landing spots. One, a home run hitter in the NFL draft. The other, probably a pretty big splash in free agency. That's where we'll start. Pro Football Network has named CJ Gardner-Johnson, Detroit Lions safety, nickel, all-around defensive back, as a potential landing spot for the Pittsburgh Steelers, saying, quote, Steelers slot corner Chandon Sullivan is on track for free agency, while Pittsburgh might try to find a better second safety to play opposite Minkah Fitzpatrick this offseason. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, haven't heard that name in a while, could compete for both roles and shouldn't cost much after missing most of the 2023 campaign with the pectoral injury. After another one-year contract in the $6 to $8 million range could make some sense. You hear $6 to $8 million. What are your thoughts there? Also, a guy that's 26 years old is coming off an injury, but was still able to play pretty well in the postseason for the Lions. I mean, you think this is a move that makes sense for Pittsburgh?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially at that price point, $6 to $8 million. That's a dream. Sucks that he got injured, that CJ got injured, but I mean, that works out pretty well for the Steelers. I mean, I think this would be a really great move, especially because I don't think the safety class in this NFL draft is particularly strong. And I think CJ Gardner-Johnson would be a pretty obvious upgrade over literally anyone on the roster not named Minkah Fitzpatrick. He's really good. And I think last year all the games that he missed kind of I don't know if that gave people a different impression of him, if it made him kind of go under the radar a little bit, but this is a guy who had 6 interceptions a year ago. He defends every pass, basically, it seems like, thrown his way. He makes so many splash plays, too. Like, this guy gets tackles for loss. He gets interceptions. He's, making tons of tackles. Like, he's just all over the field. And I feel like that's just a very Steelers safety kind of thing to do, is just to kind of not let any play go on without you being involved. I really like CJ Gardner-Johnson. I think he's really good. I think he talks a ton of trash. I think he has an attitude too, which I like as well. And at that price point, hard to ignore that he could be a real big impact player for the Steelers.
I agree. Even if you're getting him for a 1-year deal, he's 26 years old, so he's young. This is a dude that you could hopefully turn into a developmental piece and a guy that plays alongside Minkah Fitzpatrick for a while. That price point is beautiful. $6 to $8 million is no issue for the Pittsburgh Steelers, especially because, I mean, you're paying Keanu Neal 1 point whatever. You're paying Demonte KZ 1 point whatever $1 million. I mean, you move on from both of those guys, you could go get somebody else for $1 million later if you need to, or keep Demonte KZ for $1 million and you're totally fine. You move on from Patrick Peterson, there's your $6 million immediately. So there are options to make that deal happen and make that money work. I think this is a huge, like, this is immediately my favorite signing. We talked about Eddie Jackson the other day, and that's a guy that does make a lot of sense for the Steelers and I think would be awesome. Splash veteran guy, totally rounds out your secondary, allows you to, I don't know, ease up, less worry, allow Minkah Fitzpatrick to do so many other things. Gardner-Johnson, I think, is in the same boat, minus 4 years on his NFL career, which I think is very helpful. When he was with the Eagles, he was a stud. Like, I mean, last year he was good, and I enjoyed just the small glimpse that we got of him in Detroit. But when he was in Philadelphia, I don't know how this dude didn't get signed immediately in free agency. I don't know how he wasn't one of the biggest names out there on the open market when he left Philadelphia. I don't know why Philadelphia let him walk in the first place, but he was one of, if not the best secondary member of the Philadelphia Eagles, maybe outside of Jalen Mills. But, or is it Jalen Mills? Is that the... No, Darius Slay. Darius Slay.
Jalen Mills is a Patriot, sir. That's
he is a Patriot. But Darius Slay, was Darius Slay also a Patriot?
Yes. No. But Slay is Slay's an Eagle. Yeah.
He's a former Lion. See, I'm getting them connections.
Yes,
they're all
there you
go. Outside of Darius Slay, I think that Gardner-Johnson was probably the best secondary guy that they had. Dude's a stud. I think it makes a lot of sense. I like that he talks a little bit of trash. I don't know how much the Steelers need more trash talk going on, but I'm all about a fiery safety who could, take the pedal and make it work. You think this is a realistic option for the Steelers? Like, you think the Steelers would look at a guy like CJ Gardner-Johnson and say this is somebody we could add to the secondary?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, especially because the expected price is so low. Like, I don't know why you wouldn't kind of go look for something like this, especially, you move on from KZ, you move on from Keanu Neal. They have a ton of opportunities to open up some cap space for him, and they've already opened up a little bit with getting rid of Mitch Trubisky and Chooks, and there's one more, Presley Harvin. So, like, they have some money to play around with, and this would be a great place to. I feel like, because also they're going to, when we talk about a lot of the Steelers' needs, I feel like a lot of their needs are going to kind of the holes in their roster. They feel like they want to address in the draft. Quite honestly, that feels like the way things are kind of generally headed right now. Like, there aren't many free agents left that I'm like, oh, the Steelers will definitely be in on this guy. They'll definitely be in on this guy. Like, I don't think it's going to be a big spending spree this offseason, but I think it will. I think they'll have some money to play around with, and I think this is one of the places where they'll take a swing in free agency as opposed to waiting for the draft to try and find someone you can plug and play immediately.
I agree, and I think Gardner-Johnson's a guy that he's so young that you could move away from the draft. Like, if your thought was we need a safety and we're going to get one in the second or third round of the NFL draft, cool. But if not, and like you said, the options in the draft are not great, especially once you move past the first. I mean, really at all, at any point in the draft. But at 26 years old, you could view him as a guy that you're looking to get 4 years out of. That's a draft pick. And at that point, I mean, him and Minkah Fitzpatrick with Joey Porter Jr. and hopefully another first or second round corner. Like, that is a phenomenal secondary. Young, exactly what you're looking for. I mean, that's the youth movement that I think the Steelers need, as opposed to what they've been going after, which is just like veterans who are proven and can kind of plug and play, bring that leadership. I think that's the other part of Gardner-Johnson, is that he's been in the league and he's made an impact long enough at this point that he is a veteran. Like, he's a guy that you view and could say he's stepping in here. There's not much of a learning curve, if any learning curve at all. You should expect him to make an impact immediately. He's played on enough teams. I think he's played on 3 teams at this point in his career. Like, he's a dude that could come in here and just fill a gap, fill the exact gap that, really the Steelers are looking for. Would you go because you were a big Eddie Jackson guy. Would you go CJ? Same price. We'll say same price tag. CJ Gardner-Johnson, Eddie Jackson.
Oh, CJ Gardner-Johnson.
Yeah.
I mean, he's younger. I guess he's at the same price, but I figure he's going to be cheaper than Eddie Jackson in the real world. I'm much more in on CJ Gardner-Johnson than Eddie Jackson, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Just because of the age. Just simply because of
I mean, that's
what
really
you
the
can do
only
with them long term.
it's really the only difference, right? And I think I think Gardner-Johnson has some better, like, I guess you would call him ball skills. Like he had 6 picks during his last full season. Like, that's ridiculous. He led the league in them. Like,
Yeah.
and just all the tackles for loss. Like, he just makes tons of plays around the ball. That Jackson is solid, but he seems like more of a run stuffer as opposed to like a kind of ball skills guy, a turnover guy. Like, I think Gardner-Johnson has the better odds of like making splash plays. Like, he does that a lot more, I feel like, than Eddie Jackson does, which I feel like is a game changer too.
Exactly. And you can move him around. You can play him in the slot. You can play him in safety. I think that versatility allows you to do a lot of things. Name to watch. Certainly a name to watch for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Let's keep it trucking with the defensive side of the ball. You spoke to Daniel Jeremiah yesterday. You were on the Giant Zoom call that goes out every year talking about the NFL draft and all the options for different teams. He addressed the Pittsburgh Steelers, labeled their quote-unquote home run hitter when it comes to the first pick or their first pick in the NFL draft, pick number 20. Tell the folks what you learned yesterday.
Yeah, it was funny. Jeremiah, he got asked about the Steelers, and he really got one question about the Steelers, but he said they could go in about 6 different directions. With he named literally every offensive line position except for left tackle because he likes Broderick Jones. As a direction they could go in the NFL draft. He really likes this team and what they did in the draft last year, just getting a little bigger, adding some size, adding some physicality, and he wants them to keep doing that on the defensive side of the ball. He thought Toledo corner Quinyon Mitchell was the, like you said, home run pick for them, which my ears kind of perked up because I didn't even know this guy was going to kind of be in range for them. He is a fast riser. He had a really good Senior Bowl on top of a really good final season in college. So this guy really gets after the ball like Gardner-Johnson. He's a ball hawk. He gets a ton of picks. He's always around the ball defending passes. I think he had 19 last season.
19 pass deflections?
Yeah.
Or passes defensed?
Wow. Yeah. It's so it's a ton. Like, this guy's a stud. So I was all about it. I think getting another corner that you can just lock down and say this is our guy moving forward, and then you've got two stud corners and 2 young stud corners that you can lean on for the next at least 3 years. I mean, until Joey Porter Jr. has a decision to make about his contract. Like, it would be such a luxury to not have to worry about your corner spots moving forward, because it was a little patchwork trying to figure out that other corner spot last year, and I can only imagine having another guy in there that you're just so certain about for the next few years. Like, just having corner not be a position that you have to worry about for like 3 years. That would be awesome. So I was all about the Quinyon Mitchell pick. I think it'd be a good move. Just kind of got to hope that he falls there, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess there are a couple corners there that that would go in front of him. Like, there's Kool-Aid McKinstry. I'm trying to remember the other names, but like, this guy won't be the first name off the board in the corner draft. So I feel like he will kind of be in range for the Steelers. You just kind of got to hope, quite honestly, that it doesn't rise anymore, right? Because he's got some positive momentum, and I feel like at the combine he could raise his stock a little bit more, and the Steelers honestly wouldn't really want that, because then he kind of lifts out of their range.
I agree. And this is the time of year where guys are flying up the board. But at the same time, especially when I think it comes to the cornerback position, you get those guys that move so quickly up the board that once the draft, there's such a gap between the combine and the actual draft that things start to settle a little bit. And corner is such I want to say an unappealing position that the quarterbacks move, the offensive line. You know what I mean? You go to pro days and you're just like, well, DeJuan Jones was standing around and that guy moved 4 spots up the draft board. Like, that's, you get those like real appealing, and corners it's not an unattractive position, but just compared to other positions and how deep the class is, I think that could help. But I agree. Like, this is the time of year where this guy, post combine, this guy runs a 4 whatever. You are immediately thinking, yeah, he might not be in the Steelers. I mean, that was the Joey Porter Jr. thing. At that point, you were thinking, is Joey even going to be around for the Steelers, or is he, I mean, at one point people were talking like, is Julian Brents going to be the top corner option for the Steelers once they come around? And
he was like a third rounder, right? Like
that's what I'm saying. Everything shakes out differently. The combine is everybody spikes, and then corners that's a position that settles, which is good. But I agree with you. Mitchell's a stud. I heard nothing but great things about the Senior Bowl. I mean, Nick Martin talked about him every single day. He was the star that shined brightest down in Mobile. I agree with you when it comes to the cornerback position, especially in the AFC today. When you are going against Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert and all these guys constantly. I mean, Trevor Lawrence is a guy on the rise. CJ Stroud is a guy on the rise. Like, when you have to go against all these guys all the time, to have a secondary, I mean, it's just a game changer. Like, it's you no longer win through, can TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith get to the quarterback fast enough? You give them plenty of time to get to the quarterback, because you now have corners who could shut these guys down and make plays and force turnovers. I mean, how many times did we hear last year where Mike Tomlin would come to a press conference on Tuesday and say, we didn't turn the ball over enough? You get those corners, you now get the turn. Like, it's a total game changer. I think it's like, an offensive lineman would be great, but I would feel a lot more comfortable if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers plugging Dan Moore in at left tackle and say, okay, cool, or Spencer Anderson at right tackle, if that's how you're feeling at the end of it, and keeping the offensive lineman that you have right now, than starting Joey Porter Jr. and somebody that you're on at corner. If you could have star corners, that's the way to go.
Right. I mean, it's like the marginal difference between starting Dan Moore versus Levi Wallace.
Exactly.
And I think Dan Moore is a much more reliable. I guess he would be playing right tackle, right? Yeah.
I don't think he could play right tackle. He tried last year, but I think it'd be Broderick still at right, Dan at left. If it's Spencer, I think it's Broderick at left, Spencer at right.
Either way, I think Dan is a much more reliable starting tackle than Levi Wallace is a starting cornerback on either side. So to that end, I feel like the cornerback, if you're talking about what's a more urgent need, I feel like it's corner. And so that's why, I mean, Mitchell feels like home run, slam dunk, whatever words you want to use. Like, I'm all in on getting Quinion Mitchell. I think this guy's not only a good player, but addresses probably the biggest need that they have in this draft outside of center, probably. But at this point, like, the Steelers draft pick, I feel like picking at 20 is so interesting, just because they can go, like Jeremiah said, they could draft every offensive lineman. They could go with a corner. They could go, I don't know, a million different directions. They have a ton of stuff that they could play around with, but I feel like corner is still kind of the most urgent need. So addressing that right away, that's a good move in my book.
I agree. Would you consider making a move for a corner? Would you consider, if Quinion Mitchell was there at 17, would you consider, is he a guy that you would move? Compensation is not what is reliable. It's decent. It's nothing crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I definitely would. Like you said, like, moving up 3 spots isn't gonna crush you. So I would absolutely move up 2 spots. I mean, if you're giving up like a future day 3 pick or something like that, like, who cares? Like, I'm doing that all day. And it's just, I mean, it seems like the corner, like, where's Kool-Aid McKinstry going to go? Like, there's some questions, I feel like, about where all these corners are going to go. But if it comes down to draft day and it's, okay, we got to give up this, future 5th round pick, or, go without our potential corner of the future, I know which one I'm giving up really easily. That's not a problem at all for me.
I agree. I'm feeling good about it, especially if it's like, there's a lot of corners in the first round that I'm like, okay, good, good corner, I guess. But that's how it was last year. That's how it was with the guys like Emmanuel Forbes, or I don't know, Clark Phillips was up there. He fell, but Julius Brents was one of them. Like, we were talking about, great corner, a lot of potential, very interesting. Not a game, pick. Right. Yeah, like, not the guy that you're kind of taking a risk there. And I think that there are a lot of corners in this draft that you're just like, all right, good pick. Could have been better. You were looking for a little bit more of a, oh my gosh, type of pick at pick 20, especially with the limited needs that the Steelers have. I think Mitchell's that dude. Plus, he's a MAC football guy. He's a like
right.
it's
been good to the Steelers before.
That's what I'm saying. Mike Tomlin is that's his gist. You a MAC football guy. I bet you that Mike Tomlin has somehow already told this guy, hey, you on the board. You're coming to Pittsburgh. I'm sure everybody on the Toledo coaching staff has been like, hey, if you're on the board, you're going to Pittsburgh. I'm just letting you know you're going to Pittsburgh. That's all they do is pick MAC guys. And they work out almost every single time. So Mitchell would be a dude. That would be awesome. I think he's definitely. Is he your top guy to watch at the combine? Like, is he your top, is he the guy you got your eyes on more than anybody, or is there anybody else?
I mean, probably. Yeah. Because I'm just interested about how high he goes up, I feel like he's going to test really well. Like he's going to jump out of the building. He's going to run real fast. He's a pretty athletic guy. So I think there's only room for him to go up. I mean, it's kind of silly when you when we went to the combine last year, it's like, oh, this guy that we already knew was fast ran without pads on.
Yeah,
and all of a sudden fast. He goes up. He goes from a day 2 pick to a first rounder. Like, doesn't really make sense. But so it'll always correct itself. But I'm curious how high he can rise. Because it's, I don't know. Like I said, the combine's a weird deal. Like, I think the Senior Bowl should be most indicative of like who he is as a player, because they actually have pads on. He's going against his peers, kind of in live action. And I just wonder if that momentum's gonna keep up, or if, I'm just interested to see how the combine affects, especially Mitchell's stock. I think that'll be interesting.
I think that they should, instead of running, and like testing this, which I get, like there's something behind all that, and I understand it, but I feel like that stuff fades. So like you could either really hurt yourself or it means absolutely nothing. Like Kalijah Cansey ran out of the building last year, and immediately everybody's like, this dude could be a top 10 pick. He didn't. He wasn't. Like he immediately, like after a week, it was like, oh, okay. Well, realistically, when it comes to actual football, this is where Kalijah Cansey sits, and that's what happens to everybody. Like you run out of the building, and you're just like, oh my gosh, first pick in the draft. This guy's the first pick in the draft, and then it settles, and it's like, okay, never mind. Let's go back to where we were. If you're slow, it kills you. But
right,
that's the other. I think you should instead of that, they should just play I don't know, just play 7-on-7. Like let's see what happens when you just put the best guys in the nation up against each other and just say, all right, here, no tackle.
It would be more entertaining for sure.
I think that's going to tell you a lot more than running a 40. And maybe there's going to be a lot of people that are like, no way. But I just think once the dust settles, it does absolutely nothing except for hurt you sometimes. But
right.
doesn't usually help you. All right, last thing I want to talk about here. A very interesting way to talk about the Steelers quarterback situation that has obviously been the only thing that we've talked about. I think I'm getting to the point now where I'm so excited for Monday because I cannot wait to talk about anything but the Steelers quarterback situation, at least for a couple of days, couple of weeks maybe, because once free agency starts, it's right back to it. This is, what's going to happen. Here it is. But for right now, all the speculation, all the, we can name every quarterback. It doesn't mean anything for the next 3 weeks. We've kind of hit that point. That being said, NFL Network's Steve Wyche jumped on the NFL Report podcast the other day, and he was talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback situation and the conversations that are going on. He believes that the Steelers will not be interested in Justin Fields, that they want nothing to do with this guy. Why? Because of offensive coordinator Arthur Smith. He said, quote, "This conversation about the Steelers continues to intrigue me because Arthur Smith, when he was the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, he wanted no parts of Justin Fields. He had the possibility of drafting him. They took Kyle Pitts. Why now, all of a sudden, would the head coach who designed the offense taking a liking to Justin Fields?" And, that would be a really, really good point if you didn't look at the draft order and how the draft shook out for the Pittsburgh Steelers or for the Atlanta Falcons. For those of you who are unaware about what the 2021 NFL draft order looked like, let me just name it off for you. We'll go the top 11 picks. Number 1, Trevor Lawrence. Number 2, Zach Wilson. Number 3, Trey Lance. Number 4, the Atlanta Falcons selected Kyle Pitts, who at the time was viewed as possibly the greatest receiving tight end of all time. This dude was going to revolutionize the game of football. Jamar Chase went next to Jalen Waddle, Penei Sewell, J.C. Horn, Patrick Surtain, Devontae Smith, and then at number 11, Justin Fields. So just for anybody who is interested, that also would mean that if the Pittsburgh Steelers had the possibility to go out there and sign, say, Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Penei Sewell, J.C. Horn, Patrick Surtain, or Devontae Smith, they wouldn't do it. Why? Because Arthur Smith passed on him for Kyle Pitts at number 4 in the 2021 NFL Draft. You hear that? What are your thoughts?
I mean, there are like 3 guys that I would take. Like you said, there are 3 guys. No, more than 3. Like 4 or 5 guys I would take in that range. Like just in that range from in between Kyle Pitts and Justin Fields that I would take over Justin. Like,
yes,
this argument is not relevant at all. Like it just isn't. I mean, there were the Atlanta Falcons passed on Justin Fields when he was drafted, but so did 10 other teams, like this guy just wasn't in the range, it wasn't, there were a million guys that you would have drafted over him anyway, and that you would still take over him. Like that doesn't, and this isn't a draft anymore, like this isn't the same thing, taking a guy out of free agency or trading for a guy is not the same as, oh, we've got this one limited draft pick we got to use in the first round. Like we got to make sure it's a hit. We got to make sure that like it just doesn't, I don't understand this argument at all. I don't understand how it's relevant. It doesn't really make any sense to me. And I also okay, let's assume that Arthur Smith really didn't want Justin Fields in 2020, 2021 this was his
2021,
draft?
Yeah.
Can people not change their minds? Like, could he not, have a change of heart? Could he also not say, okay, this guy is a better fit in this completely different team?
Yes.
4 years later than he was when he was a rookie and I was a head coach of a team that was picking in the top. Like, nothing about these scenarios is the same. So I don't know why they would be used to compare each other to, or why they would be compared to each other in the first place.
I think when you just break it down, the whole, because I mean, I did a quick Google search of Atlanta Falcons 2021 NFL draft prospects, and there's 75 articles about how they just wanted it was Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts is the perfect match for the Falcons. The Falcons love Kyle Pitts. I mean, clearly they wanted Kyle Pitts, which made so much sense because the dude, he was a tight end who, if Trevor Lawrence was not in the draft, he probably would have been considered for the first pick in the draft. That's how good this guy was viewed coming out of college. You could break it down as simply as in Atlanta, when they had Matt Ryan as their quarterback, and I get it, Matt Ryan was at the end of his career, Matt Ryan as their quarterback in the 4th pick in the draft, they didn't want Justin Fields. So that immediately means that in the Pittsburgh Steelers with Kenny Pickett as your quarterback, and that is it, in a completely new offense, you still no longer want you. I don't get where so many things have changed. The scenario is so different. And on top of that, you're telling me that the Pittsburgh Steelers would go to Arthur Smith and say, hey, we're thinking of going to get Justin Fields, and then you're going to have the option to choose between Justin Fields and Kenny Pickett as your starting quarterback. He's just going to say no. He's just going to be like, nah, I don't think that's it, man. I think we should go get Ryan Tannehill. I don't get that. I don't get it at all.
That's what I'm saying. Also, so there have been reports that the Steelers are interested in Justin Fields, that they're fans of his game, that they like him. The idea that Arthur Smith would be able to come in and completely override, Art Rooney or Mike Tomlin or Omar Khan is, I think, pretty ridiculous in my eyes.
Wild.
Right. The idea that one guy's opinion from 3 years ago would be enough to sway an entire front office, I don't really buy that at all. I don't think that would really happen.
No, there's no chance. There's no chance. I don't even think Mike Tomlin would call him. I mean, he would, obviously, but I think that, I think if Arthur Smith was nah, not a fan of Justin Fields, I just don't think he's that good, Mike would be like, all right, yeah, sounds good. Omar, you can still call because we're still going to make this happen. There's just, no, it doesn't make, it's just such totally different situation. And the Kyle Pitts thing plays such a big role here. Justin Fields at no point in the draft process was considered a top
4. Yeah.
Yeah. He just wasn't. There were he was expected to slide even farther. I'm pretty sure the Bears moved up to get him because at that point they were just all right, how far is he going to drop? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. You could, I mean, there was a possibility. Like, I remember the Patriots needed a quarterback. Obviously, people were talking about them getting getting Justin Fields at 14, like, or 15. Like, Justin Fields was not a top 5 pick. He just wasn't viewed as a top 5 pick. Doesn't mean that he's not good, especially for what you're going to get. Like, you're not using a 4th round pick on the guy. You're at bare minimum giving up a 2nd round pick or a 3rd round pick for Justin Fields. It's just such a different situation. But Arthur Smith, man, wants no parts of him. Wants 0 parts of him. And in that, in that logic, if you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers, if Eric Stokes, Odafe Owe, Rashad Bateman, Peyton Turner, Greg Newsome, Travis Etienne, all those guys, they're available for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Well, they passed on them for Najee Harris. So, looks like no chance. Not happening. Not happening. But just the draft logic's wild. Wild. That one, I think we could toss out as possibly the worst take when it comes to Justin Fields to this point.
Right.
And, yeah, it's definitely up there.
Right. Like, there are plenty of reasons why the Steelers would not go for Justin Fields. This is not one of them.
No.
This is,
No, we could scratch that one off. And with that, we're going to head out of here because there's just nothing left to say when you talk about Justin Fields and why the Pittsburgh Steelers don't want him. Because, I mean, why would you want Justin Fields over Kyle Pitts?
If you don't draft a player immediately when he's a rookie, then you can never have him again.
No matter where he is. No matter where he is. 32 guys. Arthur Smith doesn't actually want Najee Harris either. So I'm pretty sure he was like, dude.
Yeah, why didn't Arthur Smith draft Najee Harris?
Yeah, I had the opportunity to draft that guy at 4. I decided not to do it. That's it. Pat Freiermuth, same draft. Didn't want him. That's it. Took Kyle Pitts over him. Doesn't make any sense to me. With that, we're going to head out of here. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your audio podcasts. We are really pushing those audio downloads, so we greatly appreciate any subscription and review that we could get our hands on. Check all our work at allsteelers.com as we ramp up for the NFL Combine next week. And as always, our pick coverage at InsideThePanthers.com. We will be back on Monday as we preview the Combine and then take off to Indianapolis. Enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.